You're listening to KLLG LP 97.9, Willits Hometown Radio. What follows is a transmission from the space of Dreamtime, somewhere between the seen and the unseen, where Damian Sebouhian, the host of the Gnostic Connection, met up with the Scribe of Coratopia himself, Daben-Ja Sha'Eon, for a series of conversations meant to guide the interested listener onto the path that leads to the heart-based world known as Coratopia. In Dreamtime, a world that revealed itself to be as real and as demanding of his presence as the birth of his own children, Damian had been hiking through the redwood forest for hours. He was looking for nothing in particular, which is precisely the right preparation for finding something remarkable.
What in the... This wasn't here before.
There, tucked between two giant redwoods, whose canopy had hidden it from every trail map and satellite image, stood a temple. Low walls of mossy granite, a threshold carved with alchemical and rune symbols that Damian found very familiar. Inside, a single shaft of afternoon light fell through a gap in the canopy and illuminated a giant redwood stump, ancient, wide as a room, its surface thick with lichen and moss the color of jade. And on that stump, an impossibly luminous figure sat waiting.
Hello?
I've been expecting you, Damian. Though I'll admit, I expected you about 45 minutes ago. The trail isn't that confusing.
Sorry, who are you?
My name is Daben-Ja Sha'Eon. I am the Scribe of Coratopia. I reside in the liminal space between the earthly dimension of third density consciousness and the fourth density consciousness dimension, called Coratopia. And on certain afternoons, when the fog is right and someone is genuinely ready to hear about the land of Coratopia and how to travel there, I sit on this stump and wait. Please, there's plenty of room. The moss is quite comfortable.
Wait, you're the Scribe of Coratopia? You're real? I thought you were just a figment of my imagination, like my creation.
You're not entirely wrong. It was through your imagination that a portal was opened for me to enter. The more you focused your attention on me, the more you thought and wrote about me and about the world of Coratopia, the clearer the field became for me to share my awareness with you. Your imagination doesn't belong to you alone. Imagination itself is a field within the ether, and the ether is the primary functioning component of the one mind from which all reality is formed and experienced. In any case, right now, we are meeting in the field of Dreamtime. You may not remember, but you sent out a signal in the form of a deeply felt intention for us to meet and to carry out a series of conversations. You want to use the findings from these conversations to act as the scripts for a new series of episodes for your Gnostic Connection radio show and YouTube channel. Does this sound right?
Well, now that you mention it, yes, I do remember. How amazing that my prayer is being answered, and I'm getting to speak with the one and only Scribe of Coratopia. How exciting!
Good. Now, let us not tarry any longer. I believe you're titling this series The Path of Love and the 7 Stages of Spiritual Unfoldment. Dialogues with the Scribe of Coratopia, yes?
Yes, that's what I'd like it to be titled. But so, where should we start?
Why don't you start with a question?
Great. Okay, a question. I've got it. How can I, or anyone, actually visit Coratopia, the actualized place?
Yes, that's the question, isn't it? And that is the ultimate purpose of our Dreamtime discourses, to show you the way, which is all about aligning your physical, emotional, mental, and energetic bodies towards heart-centered consciousness. In simple terms, the way to Coratopia is through the path of love. The path of love is basically the factory settings for every avatar, and the avatar is the instrument that you build to experience Malkuth, the material world of the 5 senses. You know this as your physical body, though in Coratopian terms, your avatar is so much more than your physical body alone. And the path of love is your natural state of being. I am here to help you return to that state, and when that happens, the path will transform into a portal, and all you need to do then is walk through.
The path of love. Yeah, I mean, I hear that, and it sounds right, but it also feels vague and abstract. What does that actually look like? I mean, what am I practically aiming for here?
A fair question. Before you can walk a path, you must know what it is you are walking toward. In the system I will be sharing with you, that destination is represented by what is called the zero key.
Zero? As in nothing? Or are you talking about the Fool card from Tarot?
Not nothing, no thing. That which has not yet been divided or defined.
Okay, that sounds like one of those answers that's going to make sense in about 5 minutes.
Let us hope so. And you are also correct in identifying the zero key as traditionally represented in the tarot as the Fool.
So, to embody the Fool, that's the goal?
Yes, and not in the way the modern mind hears that word. The Fool is not foolish. The Fool is free. If you look at the etymology behind the word, it comes from the French, folie, which means bag of wind. Wind, or air, is the element associated with the Fool, and this isn't any old run-of-the-mill air we're talking about. This is ruach, breath of spirit that moves through all things. According to the Kabbalists, the same invisible force that moves through your lungs, stirs the trees, and animates a living being is one and the same thing. This linguistic unity between Fool, air, and ruach is itself the teaching.
Interesting. But how does that make me free?
Its lessons, once realized, free the initiate from the distortions that accumulate through fear, conditioning, and misidentification. Free from the belief that you are only the avatar and not the awareness animating it. The Fool represents the original state of being, before fragmentation, a state of innocence, openness, and above all, love.
So you're saying the goal isn't to become something new, it's to return to something original?
Precisely. The journey is not one of acquisition, it is one of remembrance, acceptance, and integration. Now, within the cube of space, the map I will be using to guide you, the Fool occupies a very special position. It is not placed on a face of the cube, it is the axis that runs through it.
Through it?
Yes, the Fool forms the vertical axis, the line that connects what is above to what is below.
All right, could you define those for me?
The above represents self-conscious awareness. It is essentially the sky of the mind. It represents your thought patterns and everything that you are consciously aware of. The below represents the subconscious, the unknown, the deep well of memory, instinct, and mystery.
So, the part of me I'm aware of, and the part of me I'm not.
Exactly. Most humans live disconnected between these two poles. They are either lost in unconscious patterns or identified with surface-level thinking, but they are not integrated.
And the Fool connects them?
The Fool is the connection. It is the state in which above and below are no longer in conflict, but in harmony. It's where self-conscious awareness merges with the subconscious to form superconsciousness, or what Paramahansa Yogananda called cosmic consciousness.
So what does that feel like, experientially?
It feels like being completely present and completely open at the same time. Nothing is being suppressed. Nothing is being forced. You are not defending yourself against the unknown, and you are not clinging to what you think you know.
That sounds peaceful.
It is more than peaceful. It is alive. The Fool walks forward without fear, not because danger does not exist, but because it is not divided against itself.
So the love you're talking about, this path of love, it's not just about the expression of emotions with relationships, right?
No, it is a state of unified awareness. Love, in its pure form, is what remains when the fragmentation between above and below is healed.
So the Fool, the Ruach, the axis connecting above and below, I think I'm starting to feel the shape of it, but you said the path of Coratopia is the path of love. And I want to make sure I understand what you actually mean by that, because I feel like most people hear path of love and they immediately picture something, I don't know, Hallmarky.
Yes, love has been packaged.
Exactly. So what is it really? Because you're clearly not talking about romance or even kindness in the everyday sense.
I am talking about something far more fundamental than either of those things. Love, in the sense I am using it, is not a feeling you have towards someone. It is a state of consciousness you inhabit. It is what naturally flows through the instrument, through you, when the fragmentation between your above and below has been sufficiently integrated.
So love is the result of integration.
Love is both the result and the means. That is what makes it the path. You do not first achieve wholeness and then experience love. You practice love, imperfectly, courageously. And through that practice, wholeness gradually assembles itself around you.
So it's not a destination you arrive at. It's more like a direction you keep choosing?
Well said. And this is why it is a path. A path is not a place. It is an orientation. It is a way of moving through the world.
Okay, but here's what I keep bumping into, and I think a lot of people listening will feel this too. Love can be scary, like genuinely threatening. The moment you start to really open up to someone, or even to life itself, something in you wants to shut back down. Why is that?
Because the ego, your individuated self, the avatar you have spent your entire life constructing and protecting, experiences love as a kind of dissolution, and it is not wrong.
Wait, the ego is right to be afraid of love?
From its own perspective, yes. Because love does require you to become permeable, to allow something beyond your singular vantage point to enter you, to move you, to potentially change you. And the ego's entire function is to maintain the boundary between self and not self. So when love approaches, the ego reads it as a threat to its very existence.
So the ego isn't the villain of the story?
Not at all. The ego is a faithful guardian. The difficulty is that most people have placed the guardian on the throne.
The guardian is running the kingdom.
And the king, the deeper self, the awareness that animates the avatar, is locked in a back room somewhere, occasionally sending letters that nobody reads.
So the path of love is about restoring the king to the throne.
It is about recognizing who is who. The ego need not be destroyed. It need not even be diminished. It simply needs to learn its proper role. And love, when it is allowed to flow, is precisely what teaches it that role. Because love operates from a completely different principle than the ego does.
What principle?
The ego operates from transaction. It asks, what will I receive? What will this cost me? Is this safe? Is this fair? Love operates from resonance. It does not calculate. It simply responds to truth. When two fields of genuine openness encounter one another, whether that is between two people, or between a person and a piece of music, or between a person and the forest they are sitting in, love is what moves between them. It requires no negotiation.
I love that. But I want to push back on it just a little bit. How do you open yourself to that kind of resonance if your whole life has been teaching you to guard against it? I mean, some people grow up in environments where love genuinely was dangerous, where opening up got you hurt, where the people who were supposed to love you used that vulnerability against you.
Then they received a false template, and the work of the path of love in its early stages is almost entirely about identifying that false template and understanding that it was given to you. It is not the truth of what love is. It is a wound that was handed down, wearing the mask of love.
So the path begins with that recognition.
It begins with asking a very specific question. Not, why has love failed me? Though that question has its place, but more precisely, where did I first learn that love was something to be afraid of? Because somewhere, In the early experience of every person who struggles to love and be loved, there is a moment, a template, a conclusion that was drawn, often before language, about what love costs and whether it can be trusted.
And once you find that moment,
You do not fix it. You do not argue with it. You bring it love. That is the alchemy. The part of you that learned to close is not your enemy. It is a younger version of yourself who made the only reasonable decision available at the time. The path of love asks you to go back to that younger self and say, you were right to protect yourself then, and now I am here, and we can try again. The first movement of the path of love is always inward. You cannot give what you have not first received from yourself. A vessel must first be filled before it can overflow.
so when people talk about self-love, they're not talking about like bubble baths and massages and affirmations.
Those things have their place, but no. True self-love is the willingness to become present with your own interior world, including the parts that are broken, ashamed, or afraid. To sit with yourself the way a devoted companion would sit with you, without judgment, without the need to fix or rush, with simple, patient witnessing. In this sense, the definition of true love is radical acceptance.
That sounds harder than loving other people.
For most people, it is considerably harder, because other people provide a welcome distraction from one's own interior. Loving others can, in fact, become a very sophisticated way of avoiding oneself.
Ouch.
Yes, but once the interior work begins, once you start to develop that quality of compassionate presence toward yourself, something very interesting happens. You begin to discover that you are not as separate from others as you thought.
What do you mean?
The same fears that live in you live in every other person walking this earth. The same longing for connection, the same terror of abandonment, the same ache to be truly seen without being judged. These are not personal afflictions. They are the shared inheritance of consciousness, having forgotten its own wholeness. When you recognize your own wound with enough compassion, you begin to recognize it in others, and that recognition is love. It's a genuine, cellular understanding that the one in front of you is navigating the same fundamental mystery that you are.
So love is actually built on that recognition of shared experience.
On shared essence. The experience differs for everyone. The essence is identical. And when two people, or even a person and the world itself, meet at the level of essence rather than persona, the field that opens between them is what the Kabbalists called Ruach HaKodesh, the holy wind, the breath of the one mind moving through two open vessels at once.
So those moments when love feels almost cosmic, bigger than either person involved.
It is bigger than either person involved. That is a literal description of what is happening energetically. The individuated selves have stepped back far enough to allow something universal to move between them, and in that moment, the vertical axis of the Fool is activated within both of them simultaneously. Above and below cease to be in conflict. The channel is open, and what flows through it, that current, is what we call love.
So the path of love isn't a spiritual practice you do on a meditation cushion somewhere. It's how you move through life, how you meet every encounter.
It is a continuous choice. That is both its difficulty and its grace. You will not always choose it. You will close. You will contract. You will let the guardian sit back on the throne. And when that happens, the path does not abandon you. It simply waits.
The path waits.
Love is patient, and it has no deadline. Every moment is an invitation to begin again. That is the gift of the Fool, of Ruach, of this breath that moves through all things without ceasing. It does not remember your last refusal. It simply offers itself again.
So, the goal of this whole journey, the 7 stages, the cube, all of it, is to become the Fool.
Yes, to stand at the center of your being, rooted in the mystery below, open to the awareness above, and moving through the world with the innocence and trust of one who knows they are held by something greater.
That's the difficult part, the trust in knowing that there even is something greater. Actually, let me rephrase that. I know without a doubt in my heart that there is something greater than what our current reality concedes, and my heart has convinced my mind that this is the case, but my mind still wants to perceive it with its own eyes, so to speak.
That's because the mind is secure in only what it can perceive, even if what it perceives is an illusion, and even if it knows intellectually that it is an illusion, or a profoundly incomplete rendering of all there is. The mind is secure in familiarity, in running its old programs. But it's these very programs that those on the path of love are being compelled to change. Remember, the mind is what creates the ego, the guardian dog, and the guard dog is also instinctual. In fact, its instincts have been corrupted because it's been trained how to do what's not in its nature, to lead and to be the final arbiter of the avatar's reality, its goals and dreams. The most important work of alchemy for those on the path of love is returning the guard dog to his rightful place, and we do that through training. And if you've ever had to retrain a dog, you know that it doesn't happen overnight. Once retrained, it becomes so much easier to remain on the path.
That's amazing stuff. So if the destination for humanity is Coratopia, and we get there through the path of love, what are the 7 stages of spiritual unfoldment all about?
The 7 stages represent the process by which you remove everything that is not the fool, until what remains is what you have always been. When one first endeavors to be an emissary on the path of love, one is naturally confronted with these stages. It's a description of what takes place during the chrysalis phase, before the butterfly emerges.
And these stages are mapped out symbolically in the major arcana of the tarot, right?
You can find similar maps in just about any esoteric school, including Christianity. Jesus Christ, or Yeshua of the Essenes as he was known by his compatriots, was the finest teacher of the path of love that ever existed on Malkuth. If you know how to interpret the Bible, and if you read all the Gospels, not just the standard 4, you'll find a beautiful series of teachings all about the path of love. For our purposes here, I will be using the archetypal language of myth and symbol as it is expressed in the tarot and in the Kabbalah.
I've been thinking about what you said about the guard dog on the throne, about the ego running a kingdom it wasn't built to run, and I realized I've been living inside stage 1 my whole entire life.
And the fact that you can say that, see that, means you are already in motion. That is the paradox of stage 1. The moment you can observe the cage, you are already no longer fully inside it. The observing awareness is never the prisoner. Only the identified self can be imprisoned.
Right, and that's the whole setup of Case's first lesson, isn't it? He calls it bondage, but he's very careful to say it's not some external cosmic punishment. It's a consequence, like almost inevitable consequence of consciousness descending into form.
Precisely. And this is the first thing every sincere seeker must metabolize. Not just understand intellectually, but actually feel in their bones. The bondage of stage 1 is the natural condition of a being who has forgotten, temporarily and by design, what it actually is.
Say more about that. By design? Because I think a lot of people on a spiritual path, myself included, have carried this understanding of shame, I guess, about still being trapped. Like, I should be further along. What's wrong with me?
This can be difficult for many to hear, and even more difficult to understand. The inverted Malkuth, which is the world you live in today, is a Malkuth that is absent the path of love. It is the path of darkness, the path of service to self. The quote, bad news, is that this path is governed by an archontic matrix. In the path of darkness, a select elite feeds off of the energy of the masses. This creates a trickle-down effect, where all beings in this inverted Malkuth feed off of each other in order to sustain their existence. In order to keep this matrix alive and well, the predators must confound the senses with lies and mendacity. The predators program the minds of their food source so that they will be reborn again and again into this world. They accomplish this reincarnation cycle by compelling souls to return to right the wrongs they've committed in past lives, to purify the karma they've accumulated. This is a nearly impossible task for most souls, because before being reborn, every soul is forced to drink from the waters of amnesia, so that when they are born, they have no ideas of the karma they've accumulated and how to purify it. They usually simply accumulate more and more karma, compelling them to return again and again into this louche farm prison planet.
Wait, so you're saying the Gnostics are right? The god of this realm is a jealous, vindictive, power-hungry psychopath?
Yes, but that's not the ultimate truth of all reality. It's simply the half-truth of this inverted version of Malkuth. Yaldabaoth, or the Demiurge, and his endless army of archons are simply part of the program. It's like playing a video game at one of the most challenging levels, and despite the stranglehold the representatives of the path of darkness have over this world, there are plenty of beings who have figured out the game and returned to share with us the cheat codes. Yeshua of the Essenes is only one of them. The good news is, the path of darkness has reached its zenith. It can go no further. It must be transformed, or it will be destroyed. But let's not worry so much about the predators. There's nothing you can do about them. But you can change your programming and awaken your mind and heart to create your own path of love, despite the darkness all around and inside you. In fact, all beings who are hearing the call to the path of love are being compelled to search out the darkness within themselves, to transmute all archontic energies into aeonic ones.
Yes, I completely relate to everything you're saying. I've written and spoken a lot about the archons. I'm ready for some path of love teachings.
Great. Well, the teaching of the magician, the dominant principle of this first stage, is that consciousness is the primary and controlling element of all experience. But in stage 1, that consciousness has become inverted. It has taken the effects of its own creation and called them the causes. It has looked at the form and forgotten it was the form maker.
So let's get into the tarot keys themselves, because this is where I think the tableau of the tarot becomes just stunning architecturally. Stage 1 is represented by 3 cards: the Magician at the top, key 1, the Dominant Principle, Strength in the middle, key 8, the Agency, the Law at work, and the Devil at the bottom, key 15, the Conditions and Phenomena. The result, and what Case is saying, is that these 3 aren't separate things, they're one process seen from 3 angles.
You have described it precisely. And what makes this particular trinity so important for the seeker to sit with is that it reveals something that most spiritual teachings either avoid or obscure entirely. The chains are made from the same stuff as the key that unlocks them. The devil represents the bondage to the identity of a separate self, is a product of the magician misapplied. It's the same will, the same focused attention, the same law of strength, working through a distorted premise.
That's the teaching that hit me like a freight train when I first really understood it. If I focus my attention on the apparent limitations that the world demonstrates, I live a limited life. The devil represents all the things that bind me from becoming my true self. And as long as I look to the outside world alone to help define the parameters of my existence, I'll be serving the devil of the outside world. This outside world also includes the physical body. If I identify with the physical body alone, then I will look to the outside world to fulfill the needs of only me and of my body. I see a world of limited resources and money, so because I believe that I'm a separate being in competition with other separate beings, I perceive the world as something I have to struggle with for abundance and happiness. I have to get in order to achieve. I have to hoard in order to have.
And here you touch something very deep. In the Law of One teachings, what Ra calls the choice, the fundamental polarity available to every third density being, is not a choice between good and evil in the conventional sense. It is a choice about the direction of will. Service to self, or the path of darkness, contracts the energy field inward, using the magician's wand to draw all resources toward the maintenance of the bounded self. Service to others expands it, but both are expressions of the same magician energy: focused will, active consciousness, the hand that wields the wand. The difference lies entirely in what premise that will is operating from.
And in stage 1, the premise is what? Wrong? Evil? Bad?
None of those things, actually. The premise is inverted. Case calls it, and I love this phrase, getting cause and effect reversed in consciousness. External circumstances are perceived as causes. Internal consciousness is perceived as the effect. The sense of self as victim is born from this inversion, and from that sense of self as victim flows the entire architecture of the bondage, the fear, the defensiveness, the unconscious patterns. It's what Case calls the carnal mindedness, the belief that physical conditions are the determining reality of human experience.
And yet, this is a paradox I keep coming back to. It's not wrong exactly. The physical conditions are real. Pain is real. Loss is real. When I went through my divorce, when my daughters left with their mother and my life fell apart, that was not an illusion. That actually happened. So what does it mean to say the premise is inverted?
What is the difference between a wound and the truth about who you are because of the wound?
The wound is real. The story I build around it
is the chain. Yes, the external event is real. The pain is real. Case never says otherwise. What he says is that the event is an effect, that what produced it, what shaped the circumstances, is consciousness. Not your individual ego-level consciousness making decisions, the consciousness of the life power as it moves through the particular density of your being, working through the cellular memory of your body, the ancestral memories you carry, the subconscious patterns that were handed to you before you had language to question them.
And that's where strength, key 8, comes in, right? Because strength is the law through which the magician principle operates to produce the conditions of the devil. Strength isn't the villain either. Strength is just the law.
Strength is the agency through which all manifestation occurs in stage 1. The woman and the lion. The force of consciousness, the life power, working through the biological, instinctual nature. And when the subjective mind, which Case calls the mistress of the vital functions, is running programs built on false premises, the law of strength faithfully executes those programs, down to the level of the cells, down to the level of what Case calls the finer vehicles, the etheric, the astral, the causal bodies. The law doesn't evaluate the input, it simply delivers the output with extraordinary efficiency and fidelity.
Which means it will also deliver liberation just as faithfully once the input changes?
Now you are thinking like a magician.
So before we move on, let's give some concrete examples. Okay, the inverted premise, the magician misfiring, the subjective mind faithfully executing bad software. What does that actually look like on a Tuesday in real life?
Yes, great idea. Keep going.
All right. The most universal one I can think of is the story of I am not enough, the foundational bondage that almost every other chain grows out of. You feel it as a child. Maybe your parents were emotionally unavailable or critical or just stretched too thin to really see you. And from that experience, the objective mind draws a conclusion, the generalization. I must not be enough. Otherwise, they would show me affection, or whatever it is. And that conclusion goes straight down into the subjective mind, into strength, and it starts building. It builds a life.
Describe what that life looks like, what the magician, misfiring, working from that premise, actually constructs.
It looks like overachievement in some cases, working yourself to the bone to prove worth you fundamentally don't believe you have. Or it looks like the opposite, total collapse, giving up before you start, because why try when failure feels predetermined? Or it's compulsive people-pleasing, because if I can just make everyone around me happy enough, maybe the verdict will change. Maybe I'll finally be enough. And in relationships, it shows up either as clinging, I need you to tell me constantly that I'm worth something, or as avoidance, keeping everyone at arm's length so they never get close enough to confirm the verdict.
It looks like overachievement in some cases, working yourself to the bone to prove worth that you fundamentally don't believe you have. Or it looks like the opposite, total collapse, giving up before you start, because why try when failure feels predetermined? Or it's compulsive people-pleasing, because if I can just make everyone around me happy enough, maybe the verdict will change. Maybe I'll finally be enough. And in relationships, it shows up as either clinging, I need you to tell me constantly that I'm worth something, or as avoidance, keeping everyone at arm's length so they never get close enough to confirm the verdict. And all of these, the overachiever, the one who collapses, the people pleaser, the one who clings, the one who flees, are all expressions of the same inverted premise, running through the same law of strength, different outputs, identical input. And each of those behavioral patterns, as they accumulate over years and decades, creates a set of circumstances that, from the outside, appears to confirm the original premise. The overachiever burns out and finds that no achievement fills the void. The people pleaser eventually exhausts those around them and ends up feeling, once again, unseen. The one who avoids connection confirms their belief that they are fundamentally alone. Strength is not being cruel. Strength is being perfectly faithful. It is delivering exactly what the premise ordered. The imagery of the card of the woman taming the beast reflects how we train our egos. We train them based on how we perceive ourselves, how we perceive the outside world, and how we perceive ourselves within the societal structure that we believe the outside world dictates.
So the chain isn't the circumstance. The chain is the story that generated the circumstance. And the circumstance then becomes evidence for the story. It's like a closed loop, the devil's architecture.
This is what makes the bondage of stage 1 so self-sealing. The evidence always confirms the belief, because the belief is generating the evidence. This is why mere positive thinking does not break the chain. You cannot simply paste a new premise on top of the old one and expect strength to change its output. The new affirmation sits in the objective mind, but the deeper subjective program is still running. The two are in contradiction, and the subjective mind, being the older, more deeply grooved intelligence, wins. This is what people experience when they say, "I know it intellectually, but I don't feel it." The intellectual knowing is in the objective mind. The feeling is the subjective mind reporting on what it actually believes.
Which is exactly why Case insists on the practice. Daily, 4 times a day. Not because repetition magically overwrites the program, but because it's the sustained, patient dropping of new seed into the soil, gradually shifting what the subjective mind has been fed, until the new premise actually takes root in the cellular level. It takes time because the old roots go deep.
Let us take another example, a different face of the same bondage.
The money one, because it's so concrete and so loaded, and I think almost everyone can locate themselves in it somewhere.
Go.
There's a kind of person, and again, I've been this person, who grew up in a household where money was associated with anxiety. Not necessarily poverty, though sometimes that too. Just the energy around money was tight, fearful, conflicted. Arguments about scarcity, the sense that there's never quite enough and you'd better hold on to what you have. Or on the flip side, maybe money was associated with corruption, with those people, with moral compromise. Rich people are greedy. Having too much means you've taken from someone else. Either way, the child draws a conclusion. Either money is scarce and dangerous to be without, or money is abundant but morally contaminating. And that conclusion, again completely reasonable given the evidence available to a 10-year-old, goes into the subjective mind and starts running.
And strength faithfully executes. The person who carries the scarcity premise finds themselves in a life where, regardless of how much they actually earn, the experience is always of not enough. They may earn more than their parents ever did, and still feel the tightness, still find the unexpected bill, still find the money bleeding out through unconscious channels they can't quite locate or close. The person who carries the money corrupts premise may find themselves sabotaging their own prosperity at the threshold, taking pay cuts out of misplaced guilt, dismissing financial opportunities as too materialistic, unconsciously spending down windfalls before they can accumulate.
Because abundance would confirm that they are one of those people.
And they would rather be poor and virtuous than wealthy and guilty. Neither of these is the fault of the person. Both are the law doing exactly what it was programmed to do. And both are solved by finding the original premise and completing it. What is the truth that was in the error? Usually it is something like, the people around me were in pain, and money was where that pain was expressed. Money itself is neutral. The life power, the fourth affirmation, offers, from the exhaustless riches of its limitless substance, all things needful, both spiritual and material, limitless, exhaustless. This is a Kabbalistic statement about the nature of Ein Sof, the limitless light from which all form proceeds. It has no bottom. Scarcity is a premise, not a fact.
Let's do one more, because I want to get to the relational one, the love one, since that's the heart of everything we're talking about here.
The love one is the most important, and in some ways the most tender.
Right, yeah. So someone who learned early that love was conditional, that it had to be earned. Maybe a parent whose affection was warm when you performed well, good grades, good behavior, good mood, and cold or withdrawn when you didn't. The conclusion the child draws, love is performance. I must produce in order to receive. And that goes into strength, and it builds what?
It builds a life in which love is always experienced as transactional, as precarious. The person cannot rest inside a relationship because resting feels like the end of the performance, and the end of the performance feels like the end of the love. So they keep performing. They become endlessly giving, endlessly accommodating, endlessly useful, not from genuine overflow, but from the desperate labor of the person who believes they are one missed cue away from being abandoned. And inevitably, the performance becomes exhausting. The person either burns out and withdraws, which triggers the very abandonment they feared, or they begin to attract partners who unconsciously confirm the premise, who are, in fact, conditional in their love, who do require performance, who mirror back exactly the belief that drove the seeking.
And what took me so long to see and comprehend was that the people who confirm the worst beliefs about ourselves aren't, like, bad. They aren't our enemies. They are more like teachers because they mirror back to us how we're resonating. They match the frequency being broadcast. Strength trains the ego based on what's being broadcast by the magician, the focused awareness of the individual. That's the whole teaching.
And the liberation from it is not simply choosing better partners. If the premise is unchanged, the same broadcast continues from a new address, and different bodies arrive carrying the same frequency. The liberation is in the premise. The magician must reorient. The objective mind must be fed a different generalization, not because the old pain wasn't real, but because the conclusion drawn from it was incomplete. For instance, in your early 20s, when your girlfriend kicked you in the back of the neck, that didn't mean you deserved it, but there was a large enough part of you that believed you deserved it because you remained in the relationship. You signaled to yourself that you didn't deserve someone who treated you with love and compassion, so you attracted people who fit that belief structure. What is the full truth? The full truth is the people who raised you were doing what they could with what they had. Their conditional love was a reflection of their own bondage, not a verdict on your worth. Love in its actual nature, ruach, the holy wind, is unconditional. It is not something you earn, it is something you are. It is what moves through the open vessel. And strength fed this new premise, patiently, persistently, across the 4 daily thresholds, begins to restructure. The cells change, the frequency changes, the field changes. What arrives changes.
It's the same process every time. Different face, same root, inverted premise. Strength executes faithfully, devil's conditions arise and confirm the premise. And the exit is always through the same door. The magician redirected. New premise, same law, liberation executed just as faithfully.
This is why Case says the cure for this disease is a better application of the very thing that causes it. The same wand, the same will, the same strength, simply pointed, at last, and with patience, in the direction of what is actually true.
Watch and listen, which is where we are now, which is, I suppose, where we've always been. Yeah, I want to talk about what stage 1 actually feels like from the inside. because Case describes the mechanics brilliantly, but he's writing in 1924 to occult initiates. What does bondage look like in 2026 in a world of phones and algorithms and a consumerism machine that is specifically engineered to keep people in stage 1 forever?
Describe it as you have lived it. Your experience is not separate from the teaching. It is the teaching.
Okay, so, yeah, I have this memory. I was 10 years old, maybe 11. It's Christmas morning, and I'm a pretty lucky kid, middle class, 1970s. The train sets, I get the race cars, Star Wars figures. And for a few hours, it's incredible. We're playing with my brothers, and everything's great. But then it slowly starts to dissolve. Very gradually, imperceptibly, this kind of gray cloud starts moving in. The presents are still there. Nothing had happened, but some kind of hollow, dark emptiness just arrives. And I didn't have a name for it. Later, I called it the Christmas hangover. But looking back, that was my first genuine experience of Maya, of the veil, of the ancient Hindu teaching that says everything the senses offer you will fail to fill the God-shaped hole. Not because the things are bad, but because the whole isn't shaped like things and therefore can never be fulfilled by them.
And what did you do with that feeling?
What kids do, what everyone does. I tried to fill the void. The next wish list, the next experience, the next rush. And it worked, temporarily, every time, just long enough to keep the feedback loop going, which is, of course, the entire architecture of consumerism. It's the devil's intelligence applied to commerce. Keep the seeker seeking in the wrong direction. Keep the magician's wand pointed at the shelf, not the self.
This is a very precise description of what Ra called the veil of forgetting in third density consciousness. In the Law of One framework, the primary characteristic of third density, the density of choice, is that the integrated awareness of what you truly are is temporarily hidden. The soul enters the incarnation without direct access to the memory of its own nature, because, naturally, the archontic distortion has wiped the memory in the river Lethe. But it's important not to think of this as some inescapable evil. It is the design of the game your soul volunteered to play. You cannot make a genuine choice between service to self and service to others if you already remember in every cell that all selves are one. The veil of forgetting and the veil that keeps you from perceiving the whole of reality creates the stakes, and the bondage of stage 1 is what the veil feels like from the inside.
So stage 1 isn't something that happens to some people. It's the default state of being in the Malkuth of third density.
It is the starting condition of the incarnational game. Every soul who has entered Malkuth, the world of name and form, separate from the oneness of divine love, has entered through stage 1. The question is simply how long one remains asleep within it, and what, if anything, eventually disturbs the sleep.
And Case says the disturbance comes from within, which makes sense, right? I mean, because if it comes from outside, from some external event just waking you up, then we're back in the inverted premise again. We're back to thinking that the cause is out there.
The outer event can serve as the occasion for the inner recognition, but it cannot be the cause. You have known people who have experienced tremendous suffering, loss, illness, catastrophe, and come out the other side unchanged, still asleep, still in the same loops. You have also known people for whom a single quiet moment by a river was enough to crack the whole edifice of the false self. The difference was not the external event. The difference was the readiness of the consciousness. And the subjective mind, as Case describes it, is completely non-critical. It does not evaluate the suggestions it receives. It implements them. This is what makes the chains of stage 1 so adhesive. They are not held in place by some external force.
I want to pull on one specific thread here because I think it's very relevant for the listener. The bondage of stage 1 has an incredibly specific mechanism. It's not just ignorance in the general sense. Case identifies it as something very precise, superficial observation leading to false generalization. And those false generalizations get handed to the subjective mind, to strength, which then faithfully builds a life, a body, a set of circumstances that perfectly reflect the false premise. It's a closed loop.
They are held in place by the infrastructure of the self, the cellular memory, the emotional habits, the energetic grooves worn deep by years of repetition. And, as Case points out, many of these grooves were not even cut in this lifetime. They are ancestral memories, inherited patterns of consciousness, the karma of centuries moving through a single body.
Which is also exactly what Ra describes when they talk about the pre-incarnational choices and the work of balancing catalyst across multiple densities and lifetimes. The personal isn't the personal. I'm walking around carrying the unresolved business of everyone who came before me.
And everyone who will come after. Which is why the path of love, the choice of service to others, has implications that extend far beyond your individual biography. When you begin to dissolve the chains of stage 1, you are not only freeing yourself, you are clearing a frequency in the field. You are doing work that changes what is available to the souls who follow. I want to say something about the devil that I think will either disturb or liberate the listener, depending on what they are ready to hear.
Go for it.
The devil, key 15, is not the enemy. He is not the adversary. He is not even particularly evil. He is more like a portrait. He is the magician's self-portrait, painted under the conditions of forgetfulness and ignorance. Look at the card carefully. The figure on the throne, the horned Baphomet, the composite being, is a direct inversion of the Hierophant. Where the Hierophant raises one hand in blessing and points the other toward earth, the devil has inverted these gestures. Where the Hierophant's devotees stand in full humanity before him, the devil's figures are chained, but the chains are loose. They could step out of them at any moment. They simply do not know this. Or perhaps they do know it and have chosen not to.
That's the one that always gets me. Those chains are actually loose. Pamela Coleman Smith, the artist, drew that very deliberately. The humans in the card could leave. They are not physically imprisoned. They are held by their own belief in the imprisonment.
And the number of the card, 15, reduces numerologically to 6, the lovers. Stage 1, the bondage, is a distorted expression of the same principle that the lovers represent, the choice of how to direct love, how to orient the self in relation to the world. In stage 1, that orientation is unconscious. The love, the life force, is turned inward, hoarded, or projected onto material objects and relationships in the hope that they will do what only internal integration can do. The devil is the lover's sleepwalking.
And in the Law of One terms, this is what Ra means when they describe the negative path, or the service to self polarity, as not wrong in some cosmic sense, just a longer road, a less efficient route to the same ultimate destination. Because even in pure service to self, eventually the logic of separation breaks down. Eventually, even the most contracted, self-referential being must recognize that it cannot exist without the whole, that the self it has been serving was always a shared construction.
This is a teaching that third density consciousness finds very difficult to hold without collapsing it into relativism, into the idea that all choices are equivalent. They are not equivalent in terms of the suffering they generate or the efficiency of the journey toward reunion with the One, but they are equivalent in terms of their ultimate origin and destination. The path of polarity through which Ra describes the densities eventually reconverges in sixth density, where the distinction between service to self and service to others finally dissolves. But this is a very, very long road. The path of love, the service to others path, is simply the more direct invitation, the one that the fool, at the end of the journey, has fully embodied.
So stage 1, bondage, is a service to self default, but because the veil is doing its job, the premise is inverted, and the ego as guardian is running the kingdom.
And the magician energy, which is the dominant principle of this stage, is fully intact and highly operational, but it is serving the wrong master. It is a tremendous engine running on bad fuel. The power is real. The intelligence is real. What is missing is the correct understanding of what that intelligence is in service to.
It's like what Bob Dylan said, you gotta serve somebody. It might be the devil, it might be the Lord, but you gotta serve somebody. I want to bring in Hermeticism here because the Kybalion is essentially the operating manual for Stage 1, the principle of correspondence, as above, so below, as within, so without, which means that the outer conditions of my life are always a map of my inner consciousness. My circumstances are the magician's self-portrait. They're showing me exactly what premise is running in the subjective mind.
And this is why the cure for Stage 1 is, as Case says with tremendous precision, not the abolition of the magician's power, but a better application of it. The same faculty that built the prison builds the escape hatch. Concentrated, redirected, informed by a better premise, the objective consciousness that is the magician becomes the liberating force. This is what Case means when he recommends holding the mental attitude symbolized by the magician, not as simply saying good things and hoping the cosmos delivers, but as a deliberate act of reorientation, choosing again and again to inhabit the identity of one who is a center of expression for the life power, rather than a victim of its movements. Case says this beautifully. An error is always a half-truth. You don't have to get rid of your errors. What you have to do is to take the truth that is in them and complete your realization of it. This is the alchemy of Stage 1. The chains of the devil are not melted in some celestial forge. They are recognized as what they always were. The lovers turned inward. The magician's will working from an incomplete map. And when the map is completed, the chains simply relax, because they were never locked. They were chosen unconsciously, and they can be unchosen consciously, one moment of recognition at a time. In the language of the cube of space, the magician governs the above face, the plane of self-conscious awareness that descends into form. He is the channel through which the limitless light translates itself into specific manifestation. In Stage 1, that channel is partially blocked by the accumulated debris of false generalization, ancestral memory, inverted premise.
Let's talk about the body, because this is where Case gets genuinely radical for 1924 esotericist. He goes into the body, into the cells. He says the bondage of Stage 1 is not only a mental phenomena, it is literally a cellular condition. The subjective mind determines cell structure. The patterns it works by are the generalizations of the objective mind, so wrong premises produce wrong cells.
The consciousness science that was intuited by Case and encoded in the symbolism of the tarot is now being confirmed by what your researchers call epigenetics and neuroplasticity. The belief systems held in the subjective mind do, in fact, alter gene expression. The sustained emotional states of the body, what some of your neuroscientists call the chemistry of thought, modify the receptor sites of cells. The body is literally being rebuilt continuously, according to the blueprint of the dominant consciousness patterns. Case was seeing this through the Kabbalistic lens of strength key, the law of the subjective mind's absolute authority over vital functions. The mechanism is the same.
And the ancestral memories, the accumulated generational patterns, those are also in the body. That's what epigenetics is now showing us. Trauma is heritable. The fear responses of my Armenian great-grandparents who were escaping a Holocaust are literally in my nervous system.
And they are also, in a deeper sense, in your energetic body. What you experience as ancestral inheritance is also what the Law of One calls karmic patterns, which are unresolved frequencies seeking completion. The chains of Stage 1 are multi-layered. Some of them you chose in this lifetime, through the accumulation of your own false conclusions. Some were given to you at birth, encoded in the family field and the collective unconscious. And some are older still, patterns of the larger soul complex that have been cycling toward resolution across many incarnations.
Let me bring it back to the destination for a moment, because I think it's important for people to understand why any of this matters, why Stage 1 matters, why doing this work, this unsexy, non-flashy daily affirmation and meditation on the magician work is actually the most revolutionary thing a person can do.
Then let us say it plainly.
The goal, the destination that you've been pointing me toward since our first meeting is Coratopia, fourth density consciousness, heart-centered reality, the world that Ra calls the density of love and understanding. And the reason most people aren't there, the reason humanity as a collective is still clinging to the early stages of third density, is stage 1. It's the inversion. It's the belief that the outer world is causal and the inner world is reactive. That's the root of war, addiction, exploitive economic systems, acts of destruction toward the earth. They all trace back to a consciousness that believes it is separate, finite, running on scarce resources, needing to compete and acquire and defend.
You've been listening to the Gnostic Connection on KLLGLP 97.9, Willits Hometown Radio. This has been The Temple in the Redwoods, The Path of Love, How to Find Your Way to Coratopia.